6 months later, the Forbidden Sector looked very different. Research stations dotted the system like bright stars. Ships came and went regularly, bringing scientists, diplomats, and curious observers from across the galaxy. The sector was no longer forbidden. It was home. Void was fully grown now, standing 4 meters tall at the shoulder with a wingspan that stretched 12 meters. The creature was magnificent, with scales that shifted colors in the light and 6 eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. But despite the size and power, Void still had the same habits from cubhood. The main research station had an entire room dedicated to cardboard boxes. Void had collected 37 of them arranged by size. Every evening, the massive stalker would inspect each box carefully before choosing one to sleep in. Usually, Void picked one that was far too small, and parts of the creature would stick out at odd angles. But Void did not care. Cardboard boxes meant safety and comfort. Engineer Deho now led the human stalker integration program. His days were spent working with Void and the other stalkers, learning their language and teaching them about human technology. He had learned to read the subtle color shifts in their scales, which was how they showed emotion and communicated complex ideas. Dr. Minho ran the xenobiology department, studying everything about Void stalker culture. What he discovered amazed the galaxy. The stalkers were artists, creating beautiful crystal sculptures using their acidic saliva to shape the minerals. They played games that combined physical skill with strategic thinking. They had names for each other, conveyed through combinations of sounds and bioluminescent patterns. They even had something like music, a series of harmonized purrs and rumbles that could last for hours. The partnership between humans and stalkers had proven valuable for both sides. The stalkers' natural abilities made them excellent scouts and explorers. Their camouflage was perfect. Their senses could detect things human instruments missed. Their telepathic pack coordination meant they could work together with incredible precision. In return, humans provided medical care that had extended stalker lifespans by decades. They created tools adapted for the stalkers' 6-limbed bodies. They offered friendship and understanding that the stalkers had never known from other species. Other species began arriving to learn from the human approach. A group of Krillian descendants came, the survivors of colonies that had escaped their empire's fall. When they first saw Void stalkers walking peacefully beside humans, many of them wept. One elderly Krillian touched Void's scales with a trembling hand and whispered an apology for what her ancestors had done. Void had responded by gently nuzzling the old woman, a gesture of forgiveness that needed no translation. High Counselor Vexithron visited the station regularly. His people, who had fled this sector 10,000 years ago, were slowly returning to their ancestral worlds. The counselor kept the original cardboard box in his office, preserved in a stasis field. It had become a symbol across the galaxy, a reminder that compassion could succeed where force failed. Captain Hyunwoo had returned to his family after the first month, but he visited often. His children loved playing with the stalker cubs that were born at the station. Watching a 6-year-old human girl ride on the back of a young Void stalker while both laughed had become a common sight. One evening, Daiho sat in the observation deck with Void. They looked out at the crystal moon where they had first met. The ruins of the Krillian fortress were visible in the distance, a reminder of past mistakes. Void made a series of sounds and color shifts. Daiho had learned to understand the basic meanings. He pulled out his translator device and listened to the interpretation. Void says there are others, the translator reported, deeper in the sector. Others who hide. Others who are scared, Daiho sat up straighter. Other stalkers? Void's scales flickered in a pattern that meant no. The translator continued. Not stalkers, different, very old, very alone. Even stalkers avoid them. But now stalkers think maybe humans can help. Humans are good at helping. Daiho felt excitement rise in his chest. There were other species in this sector, species so mysterious that even Void stalkers avoided them. He immediately activated his communicator. Dr. Minho, Ambassador Taiho, you need to hear this. Within an hour, a meeting was organized. Void stood in the center of a room full of humans and several other adult stalkers. Using a combination of the translator and holographic displays, Void explained what the stalkers knew. Deep in the sector, in a region that even the stalkers found difficult to navigate, lived beings that the stalkers called the Silent Ones. They were ancient, possibly older than any known spacefaring civilization. They did not communicate in ways the stalkers could understand. They created strange effects on reality itself, making sensors malfunction and causing ships to get lost. The stalkers had always avoided them, not out of fear exactly, but out of respect and uncertainty. But lately, the Silent Ones had been showing signs of distress. The environmental effects were becoming more chaotic. The stalkers believed something was wrong, but they did not know how to help. They need help, but they're too different for us to understand. Void communicated through the translator. But humans are good at understanding different. Humans understood us when no one else could. Maybe humans can understand them too. Ambassador Taiho looked around the room at the assembled team. Scientists, engineers, diplomats, and stalkers all working together. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. Now it felt natural. What do you think? He asked the group. Should we try? Dr. Minho grinned. When has humanity ever turned down a chance to meet new people? Even if they're weird, reality-bending ancient people. Deho nodded. Void trusts us to help. That's good enough for me. Then we'll need to prepare an expedition, Taiho said. But this time we go in properly. Full support, proper equipment, and most importantly, we go with the stalkers as partners, not alone. Void's scales flashed in a pattern that meant happiness and agreement. The other stalkers rumbled their approval. Later that night, Deho stood again at the observation deck. Preparations would take weeks, maybe months. There would be challenges ahead, possibly dangers, but he was not worried. They had proven that understanding was stronger than fear, that kindness was more powerful than weapons. Void came and sat beside him, the massive stalker somehow managing to fit into a space that was slightly too small. Deho smiled and scratched behind Void's auditory ridge. The hind leg started thumping immediately. We'll figure it out, Deho said, just like we figured out cardboard boxes. Void's purr filled the observation deck, a sound of contentment and trust. Outside, stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Silent Ones waited, alone and troubled. But they would not be alone for much longer. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from humanity. The lesson was simple but powerful. Sometimes the most feared creatures just need someone who cares. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible when you approach it with an open heart instead of a closed fist. And sometimes all you need to change the galaxy is kindness, patience, and a cardboard box. In his office on Xanthera Prime, High Counselor Vexthran looked at the preserved cardboard box. He had shown it to hundreds of visitors, telling them the story of how humans succeeded where empires failed. Each time he told it, he ended with the same words. We thought we knew everything about strength and power, he would say. We built weapons and walls and feared what we did not understand. But humans showed us a different kind of strength. The strength to be kind when others would be cruel. The strength to offer help when others would attack. The strength to see a frightened child, not a dangerous monster. He would tap the box gently. This simple thing changed the galaxy. Not because it is special, but because it represents something special. It represents the moment when fear became trust, when hate became friendship, when the impossible became real. And far away in the research station, Void slept peacefully in cardboard box number 38, dreaming of crystal sculptures and games with friends, completely unaware that this simple stalker had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all, that love and kindness will always be stronger than fear and violence. The forgotten sector was no longer forgotten. It was home, and humanity had made friends with the apex predators that everyone else had feared, all because one engineer saw a hurt creature and decided to help, all because of a cardboard box. The end. Every species failed to domesticate the apex predator's cub. Human did it with a cardboard box part. The journey back to Xanthera Prime took 7 days. The human ship traveled slowly because they had to make special accommodations for their unusual passenger. Void had grown bigger during the trip, now almost the size of a horse. The cardboard box had been replaced 3 times, each new one larger than the last. As they approached the station, Captain Hyunwoo received constant messages from the council. Some were warnings, some were threats, a few were curious questions. But most were variations of the same demand. Leave the Void Stalker outside and come alone. Not happening, Deho said firmly. He was brushing Void's scales, something the creature loved. Void's purring vibrated through the entire ship. Void is part of our crew now. When they docked, they found 12 different species defense ships surrounding them. Weapons were powered up. Shields were active. It looked like they were preparing for war, not welcoming back a survey team. Ambassador Taiho met them at the airlock. His face showed relief when he saw them alive, but his eyes widened when he saw Void walking beside Daeho, carrying a new cardboard box that had holes cut in the sides for ventilation. "It's bigger than I expected," Taiho said quietly. "Growing fast," Dr. Minho replied. "We estimate full size in another 6 months. Should reach about 4 meters at the shoulder, maybe 12-meter wingspan." Taiho rubbed his face. "The council is in emergency session. They want explanations. High Counselor Vex Thran is trying to keep everyone calm, but some representatives want you arrested. Others want the creature destroyed. A few want both. Then we better go explain," Hyunwoo said, "before they decide for us." The council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled and more representatives stood in the aisles. Security forces lined the walls, their weapons ready. When the doors opened and the humans walked in with Void, the chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives screamed. Some ran for the exits. Others activated personal shields. The security forces raised their weapons, but no one gave the order to fire. They were all too shocked. Void looked around with curiosity. The cub had never seen so many different species before. Its 6 eyes moved independently, taking in everything. When someone screamed particularly loudly, Void's ears flattened and it moved closer to Deho. "Order!" High Counselor Vex Thran's voice boomed through speakers. "I will have order in this chamber." Slowly, the chaos died down. Representatives returned to their seats, though many kept their eyes locked on Void. The security forces did not lower their weapons. "Ambassador Taiho," Vex Thran said formally, "your crew has much to explain. How is it that you have survived contact with adult Void stalkers? How is it that you have brought a cub here, to the heart of galactic civilization? And how is it that the creature appears to be domesticated?" Taiho stepped forward. "High Counselor, honored representatives, what my crew has discovered will change how we understand Void stalkers. But to explain that, I need to tell you about Earth." He activated a hologram. Images of Earth appeared showing wolves, bears, lions, and other predators. "My world is full of dangerous creatures. Many of them could easily kill a human. Our ancestors were not the strongest or fastest, but they survived by learning to understand these predators, not by trying to control them." The hologram showed ancient humans with wolves. "Thousands of years ago, we formed a partnership with wolves. Not through force or genetic manipulation. We offered food and shelter. The wolves offered protection and companionship. Both species benefited. Over time, those wolves became dogs, humanity's most loyal friends." "This is not the same," a reptilian representative objected. "Wolves are pack animals. They have social structures humans could work with. Void stalkers are solitary apex predators." "That's what we thought too," Dr. Minho said, stepping forward. "But we were wrong. Counselor, may I present my findings?" Vex Thran nodded. Minho activated his own hologram, showing data from their time in the Forgotten Sector. "Void stalkers are not solitary. They live in family packs of 5 to 7 adults. They have complex social structures. They communicate through a combination of sounds, bioluminescent patterns on their scales, and what appears to be low-level telepathy. They care for their young, teach them to hunt and protect each other." The hologram showed footage of the adult stalkers examining Void on the crystal moon. "Watch how gentle they are with their cub. Watch how they coordinate without speaking. This is not the behavior of mindless killers. This is a highly intelligent, deeply emotional species." "Then why did they destroy the Krillian Empire?" someone demanded. "Because the Krillians took their cubs by force," Hyunwoo answered. "They hunted them, captured them, tried to break their will. Imagine if someone came to your world, took your children, and tried to turn them into weapons. How would you respond?" The chamber went quiet. That was a question everyone understood, regardless of species. "We didn't take Void," Daeho said quietly. "We found a hurt child and helped. That's all. We didn't want anything in return. We just saw someone who needed help." "Prove it," a voice called out. "Prove that creature is truly safe." Daeho looked at Hyunwoo, who nodded. Daeho walked to the center of the chamber floor and sat down. Void followed immediately, dropping the cardboard box. The cub circled 3 times and lay down, resting its massive head in Daeho's lap. The purring sound filled the silent chamber. Daeho pulled out a brush and began grooming Void's scales. He talked while he worked, his voice calm and clear. "Every morning Void wants to be brushed. In the afternoon, Void likes to play with a ball we made from scraps. In the evening, Void helps me do maintenance checks because the creature is curious about everything. At night, Void sleeps in a cardboard box even though we offered better beds. He scratched behind one of Void's auditory ridges, and the creature's hind leg started thumping, just like a dog's. Void is learning words in several languages. Void recognizes each crew member and has different greetings for each person. Void is smart, emotional, and kind. Yes, Void could hurt us. Those claws could cut through our ship's hull. But Void doesn't want to hurt anyone. Void just wants to learn, play, and be loved. Void yawned, showing all those black glass teeth, then nuzzled against Deho and closed its eyes. The difference, Taiho said into the silence, between humans and every species that failed before, is that we never tried to control Void. We never tried to use Void as a tool or weapon. We simply showed kindness to a creature that needed help, and that creature chose to trust us in return. Void suddenly stood up. The cub picked up its cardboard box and walked directly to High Counselor Vexithran. Every security force tensed. Vexithran himself froze in his seat. Void set the box down in front of the ancient counselor. The cub sat back and waited, tail wagging slowly. "It's offering you the box," Minho said softly. "That's Void's most treasured possession. Void is saying you're a friend." Vexithran stared at the box for a long moment. His people had fled from Void stalkers 10,000 years ago. They had built their entire civilization around avoiding these creatures, and now one was offering him a gift of friendship. Slowly, the old counselor reached out and touched the cardboard box. Void chirped happily and bounded back to Deho, satisfied. Vexithran held the box in his clawed hands. He looked around the chamber at all the representatives, at all the species that had feared Void stalkers for so long. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have been wrong about many things. Perhaps it is time we learned a new way." He looked at the humans. A human way. The chamber erupted in discussion again, but this time it was different. This time people were talking about possibilities instead of threats. This time they were asking questions instead of making demands. And in the middle of it all, Void slept peacefully in a cardboard box, having changed the galaxy with nothing but trust and a wagging tail. Every species failed to domesticate the apex predator's cub. Human did it with a cardboard box part. 3 days had passed since they found the cub. The humans had set up a better camp inside the bunker, and the little Void stalker was getting stronger. It still slept in its cardboard box, which Deho had reinforced with tape after the cub accidentally tore through one side with its claws. The crew had started calling it Void, even though Captain Hyunwoo said they should not name it. But how could they not? The creature followed Deho everywhere, sometimes carrying its box in its mouth. When it got tired, it would drop the box, crawl inside, and wait for Deho to carry it. A killing machine that acted like a sleepy puppy. "Sensors are going crazy," Jiwan said, staring at her screen. "Multiple contacts, big ones. They're circling us." Everyone went quiet. They knew this would happen. The adults would come looking for their cub. The question was what they would do when they found humans with it. Dr. Minho looked at his own scanner. 5 signatures. Moving in a pattern. "They're hunting. Or scouting," Deho suggested. He was sitting on the floor with Void, who was chewing on a piece of dried meat. "Maybe they're just trying to understand what we are before they approach." "That's optimistic," Hyunwoo muttered. He activated the long-range communicator. "This is Captain Hyunwoo to Galactic Council Station. We have a situation." "Repeat, we have a situation." The response came quickly. It was Ambassador Teho's voice, tight with worry. "Captain, thank the stars you're alive. We thought you were lost. What's your status?" "We found a Void Stalker cub," Hyunwoo said. "Injured. We helped it. Now the adults are here." Silence on the other end. Then Taiho's voice came back, along with other voices arguing in the background. "Captain, you need to evacuate immediately. Leave the cub and run. The council says this is what happened to the Krillians. They took cubs and the adults came for revenge." "We didn't take the cub," Hyunwoo replied. "We rescued it." "There's a difference." "The Void Stalkers won't care about the difference," another voice said. It sounded like High Counselor Vexithran. "They never have before. You must leave now while you still can." Deho stood up. Void looked up at him and made a questioning chirp. "We're not leaving," he said firmly. "If we run, they'll think we hurt their cub and tried to escape. But if we stay and show them that their baby is safe, maybe they'll understand." "That's a big maybe," Jiwan said. But she did not move toward the door either. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. They were scared but determined. He thought about his children back home, about how he promised to come back. But he also thought about what kind of father he would be if he taught them to abandon those who needed help. "All right," he said. "We do this together. Daeho, you take Void outside. Show them their cub is safe. The rest of us will stay nearby but not too close. No weapons in hand. We don't want to look threatening." They moved outside slowly. The crystal field glittered under the twin suns. The shadows between the formations seemed darker than before, thicker somehow. Daeho carried Void in its cardboard box. The cub poked its head out, looking around with interest. Then the adults appeared. They did not walk out from hiding. They simply became visible, as if they had been standing there all along and only now decided to let the humans see them. They were massive. Each one stood over 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Their scales were darker than Void's, a black so deep it seemed to pull light into it. 6 eyes on each head, all focused on the humans. Wings folded against their bodies, each wing large enough to cover a small house. Their claws, extended and ready, gleamed like obsidian knives in the sunlight. The largest one, clearly the pack leader, took a step forward. The ground trembled slightly. Its movement was perfectly silent despite its size. Every eye locked onto Daeho and the box he carried. "Easy," Daeho whispered. Though he did not know if he was talking to himself or to the massive predator, he set the box down gently and stepped back. Void scrambled out of the box immediately. The cub chirped loudly and bounded toward the alpha on its 6 legs. The injured wing still dragged a bit, but Void did not seem to care. It reached its parent and began rubbing against the alpha's legs, purring that grinding stone sound. The alpha bent down its massive head. It sniffed Void carefully, checking every inch of the cub. The other adults moved closer, forming a protective circle. One of them, slightly smaller than the alpha, examined Void's injured wing with movements so gentle and precise that Dr. Minho caught his breath. "They're parents," Minho whispered. "Not monsters. Parents checking if their baby is okay." The alpha finished its examination of Void. The cub seemed happy, bouncing around its parent and the other adults. Then the alpha turned its attention to the humans. All 6 eyes focused on Daeho specifically. The predator took a step toward him. Jiwan's hand moved toward her weapon. Hyunwoo grabbed her wrist and shook his head. They could not fight these creatures. If the stalkers wanted them dead, weapons would not help. The alpha stopped right in front of Daeho. It was so tall that Daeho had to look up to meet its eyes. Those black eyes that reflected nothing, that seemed to look into his very soul. For a long moment, human and stalker regarded each other. Then the alpha did something that no one expected. It lowered its head in what could only be described as a bow. Just a slight dip, but the meaning was clear. The other adults followed, all 5 massive predators bowing to the small group of humans. "They're thanking us," Minho breathed. "They know we helped their cub." Void chirped again and ran back to Daeho. The cub picked up its cardboard box in its mouth and dropped it at his feet. Then it sat down, looking between Daeho and its parent, tail wagging. The alpha made a low rumbling sound. The other stalkers began to fade back into the shadows, their forms blurring and vanishing. But the alpha stayed a moment longer. It looked at Void, then at Daeho, then back at Void. Another rumble, softer this time. Void chirped but did not move toward its parent. Instead, the cub pushed its box closer to Daeho. "I think," Daeho said slowly, "I think Void wants to stay with us." The alpha watched for another long moment. Then it made one final rumbling sound and stepped back. It did not disappear like the others. It stayed visible at the edge of the crystal field, watching, waiting. A parent letting its child explore but staying close enough to help if needed. "Ambassador," Hyunwoo said into his communicator, his voice shaking slightly. "You're not going to believe what just happened." Over the communicator, they could hear the chaos in the council chamber. Voices shouting, alarms going off, representatives demanding explanations. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that Void had curled up in its cardboard box again, content and safe. What mattered was that 5 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators had chosen not to kill the humans who helped their young. What mattered was that everything the galaxy thought it knew about Void stalkers was wrong. Daeho sat down next to the box. Void reached out one paw and rested it on his knee. The cub's purring filled the air, a sound of trust and contentment. In the distance, the Alpha watched over them all, a guardian rather than a threat. And somewhere in the Galactic Council, representatives were learning a lesson that would change the galaxy forever. Sometimes the simplest act of kindness can accomplish what weapons and technology never could. Every species failed to domesticate the apex predator's cub. Human did it with a cardboard box part. The moon's surface looked like a field of broken mirrors. Crystals grew everywhere, some as tall as buildings, all of them catching the light from two distant suns. The human expedition had landed 3 days ago, and they still could not believe what they were seeing. Dr. Minho walked carefully between the crystal formations, his scanner beeping steadily. He was a young man with glasses that kept sliding down his nose because of the sweat. Despite the danger, he could not help but smile. This place was amazing. Every reading showed things he had never seen before. "Minho, stay close to the group," Captain Hyunwoo called out. He was older, with worry lines around his eyes that seemed deeper now. He kept one hand on his weapon at all times. The ruins in the distance made him nervous. Big ruins meant big things had lived here, and big things might still live here. The Krillian fortress was half buried in crystal and dust. It must have been impressive once, with walls as thick as a ship's hull, and weapons platforms on every tower. Now it was just broken stone and twisted metal. The team had been exploring it for 2 days, finding nothing but old bones and burn marks. Engineer Daeho was checking the power systems in one of the outer buildings. He was humming an old song, something his grandmother used to sing. He did not look worried like the captain. He did not look excited like the doctor. He just looked focused on his work the way he always did. "Found something," Sergeant Ji-won said over the radio. She was on top of a ridge scanning the area. "Movement about 2 kilometers out. Can't get a clear read on it." Everyone froze. Captain Hyunwoo pulled out his binoculars and looked where Ji-won pointed. He saw nothing. Just crystals and rocks and shadows, but the scanner showed something moving. "Back to the ship," Hyunwoo ordered. "Now, everyone move." They started walking quickly back toward their landing site. Dr. Minho kept looking over his shoulder. Daeho put away his tools. Ji-won kept her rifle ready. The 2 suns were setting now, and the shadows between the crystals grew longer and darker. That was when the ground shook. A crystal formation ahead of them cracked and fell, blocking their path. Then another fell behind them. They were trapped in a small clearing surrounded by sharp crystal walls. "This way," Hyunwoo pointed to a gap between 2 crystals. "Stay together." They squeezed through the gap and found themselves in front of an old Krillian bunker. The door was half open, rusted but still solid. It was shelter at least. Hyunwoo made the decision quickly. They went inside. The bunker was dark and smelled like old metal. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, showing empty rooms and broken equipment. There were scratches on the walls, deep ones that went through the metal. "Claw marks. I don't like this," Ji-won whispered. "We're sitting targets in here. Better than being out in the open," Hyunwoo replied. But his hand stayed on his weapon. That was when they heard it. A sound like crying, high-pitched and weak. It came from deeper in the bunker, from a section where the ceiling had collapsed. "Could be a trap," Ji-won said. "Could be someone who needs help," Minho countered. Daeho was already walking toward the sound. The others followed, weapons ready. They climbed over broken concrete and twisted metal. The crying got louder. When they finally saw what was making the sound, everyone stopped breathing. It was a void stalker cub. It lay trapped under a fallen beam, one wing bent at a wrong angle. It was about the size of a large dog, covered in black scales that seemed to shimmer with rainbow colors when the light hit them just right. 6 black eyes looked up at the humans with what could only be described as fear. "Sweet mother of Earth," Minho breathed. "It's just a baby." "It's a void stalker," Hyunwoo said firmly. "We leave it now." "It's dying," Daeho said quietly. He was already setting down his pack. "Look at it. It's been here for days, maybe weeks. It's starving." "Daeho, think about what you're doing," Hyunwoo warned. "That thing is dangerous. Even as a cub, it could kill you." "It's hurt and scared," Daeho replied. He took a step closer. The cub hissed at him, showing teeth like black glass. It tried to camouflage, its scales shifting colors, but it was too weak. The effect flickered and died. Daeho sat down on the floor about 3 meters from the cub. He pulled out his ration bar and slowly unwrapped it. The cub watched him with all 6 eyes. Daeho took a bite, chewed slowly, and swallowed. Then he broke off a piece and slid it across the floor toward the cub. The cub sniffed the food but did not eat it. It kept watching Deho. "This is insane," Jiwan muttered. But she did not lower her weapon. Hours passed. The sun set completely and the bunker grew cold. The team set up a small camp in the adjacent room, taking turns to watch. But Deho stayed with the cub. He talked to it in a soft voice, telling it about Earth, about his grandmother, about anything that came to mind. He moved some of the smaller debris away from the trapped creature, working slowly so as not to scare it. The cub's crying stopped. It watched Deho work. When he offered water through a tube from his canteen, the cub drank. When he offered more food, the cub ate. Slowly, carefully, it began to trust him. By morning, Deho had cleared enough debris to reach the beam that pinned the cub. It was too heavy to lift alone. He looked back at his team. "I need help," he said simply. Minho came first. Then Jiwan, though she kept one hand on her pistol. Even Captain Hyunwoo finally helped, shaking his head the whole time. Together they lifted the beam just enough for the cub to crawl free. The cub tried to stand on its 6 legs but fell. The injured wing dragged on the ground. It looked up at the humans, and for a moment everyone thought it might attack. Instead, it made a small chirping sound. Deho noticed the cardboard box he had brought supplies in. It was empty now, about the right size. On impulse, he tipped it on its side and pushed it toward the cub. The cub sniffed the box. It tilted its head, looking at the box from different angles with different eyes. Then slowly it crawled inside. It turned around 3 times the way dogs do and curled up. Its 6 legs tucked under its body, and its tail wrapped around its nose. Within seconds it was asleep. The humans stared. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy, the creature that had destroyed entire civilizations, was sleeping in a cardboard box like a tired puppy. "Did that just happen?" Jiwan asked. "I think so," Minho replied. He was already pulling out his camera. "No one is going to believe this." Captain Hyunwoo rubbed his face with both hands. "We need to report this. But how do we explain that we just rescued a void stalker with a cardboard box?" Deho smiled and gently touched the edge of the box. The cub's breathing was steady and peaceful. "I don't think we need to explain it," he said. "Sometimes things just are what they are. This little one was hurt and alone. We helped. That's all." Outside the bunker, the twin suns rose over the crystal fields. Somewhere in the distance, shapes moved through the shadows. Large shapes. Ancient shapes. The adults were coming, and they would find their lost cub safe, sleeping in a box, watched over by creatures they had never expected to meet as friends. The Galactic Council chamber was huge. It floated in space, orbiting a bright blue planet called Zenthera Prime. Inside the chamber, hundreds of different alien species sat in their seats. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like floating clouds of gas. They all came from different worlds, different stars, but today they all looked worried. Ambassador Tejo stood quietly in the human section. He was a tall man with dark hair starting to turn gray at the edges. He had been the human representative for 5 years now, and he had seen many strange things. But he had never seen the council look this scared. High Counselor Vexthran rose from his seat. He was very old even for his species. His scales were pale green and covered in patterns that showed his age. His yellow eyes looked around the room before he spoke. When he talked, his voice was deep and made everyone listen. 3 survey teams have gone missing, Vexthran said. All of them went to the Forgotten Sector. None of them came back. Whispers filled the chamber. The Forgotten Sector was a part of space that no one visited. There were old stories about that place. Scary stories that parents told their children to keep them from going there. Tejo leaned forward. He had heard about the missing teams, but he did not know they had gone to that sector. No one went there. The star map showed it clearly marked with warning symbols. Even space pirates avoided it. Perhaps it is time to tell the younger species why we avoid that sector, Vexthran continued. He pressed a button and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a creature that made many of the representatives gasp. The creature in the hologram was like nothing from Earth. It had 6 legs and a long body covered in black scales that seemed to swallow light. 2 wings folded against its sides. Its head had 6 eyes arranged in a circle, all of them completely black with no white parts at all. When it opened its mouth, the teeth looked like black glass, sharp and terrible. "The Voidstalkers," Vexthran said, and his voice carried real fear. "The apex predators of the Forgotten Sector. They are the reason we abandoned that entire region of space 10,000 years ago." An insect-like representative clicked its mandibles nervously. Surely they are just animals. Dangerous, yes, but just animals. That is what the Krillian Empire thought, Vexthran replied. He changed the hologram. Now it showed a massive fortress on a moon surrounded by weapons and shields. 5,000 years ago, the Krillians were the strongest military power in the galaxy. They had millions of soldiers and technology we still do not fully understand. They found Voidstalker cubs and decided to train them as weapons. The hologram changed again. This time it showed ruins. The fortress was destroyed. Walls had huge claw marks on them. There were no bodies, no survivors, nothing but empty buildings and bloodstains. The Krillian Empire fell in one generation, Vexthran said quietly. They are extinct now. Every last one of them. The Voidstalkers made sure of that. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the floating gas beings had stopped their constant movement. A mechanical voice spoke from the synthetic section. Our ancestors also attempted contact. We sent automated facilities with perfect logic and advanced shielding. The facilities were destroyed. Our analysis showed the Voidstalkers understood our technology better than we expected. They found weaknesses we did not know existed. They learned from each encounter and adapted their hunting methods. The footage from the last facility showed one stalker watching our defensive patterns for 3 days before attacking. When it did attack, it took exactly 17 seconds to breach 7 layers of security. Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. These creatures were not just strong and fast. They were smart. Very smart. Other species tried different approaches, Vexthran continued. The Harmonious Collective tried to communicate through telepathy. The stalkers invaded their minds and drove them insane. The trader guilds tried to bribe them with food and treasures. The stalkers took the offerings and then hunted the traders for sport. Every attempt, every method, every strategy has failed. The Voidstalkers cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be controlled. They can only be avoided. He looked directly at Taiho. Which is why I must ask the human representative a question. We detected 3 human survey ships entering the Forbidden Sector 6 days ago. Why? All eyes turned to Taiho. He stood up slowly, feeling the weight of hundreds of stares. Our science division detected unusual energy readings in that sector. The readings suggested possible ancient technology, or perhaps a natural phenomenon we have not seen before. Captain Yunwu requested permission to investigate. It was granted because we did not know about the Voidstalkers. The information about this sector was not in the databases we received when we joined the council. Vexthran's eyes widened. You did not warn them? We could not. We did not know there was anything to warn them about. The chamber erupted in noise. Some representatives shouted in anger. Others wailed in what sounded like mourning. A few just shook their heads sadly. They are already dead, someone said from the back. Just like all the others. Taiho felt his stomach drop. The crew of those ships included people he knew. Dr. Minho, who loved learning about new species and always had a joke ready. Captain Hyunwoo, who had 3 children waiting for him at home. Engineer Daeho, who could fix anything and always hummed old songs while he worked. We need to send a rescue mission, Taiho said firmly. That would only result in more deaths, Vexthran replied. I am sorry, Ambassador. Truly I am. But the Voidstalkers do not leave survivors. The best we can do is honor their memory and make sure no one else makes the same mistake. Taiho wanted to argue, but what could he say? Everyone in this room had lost people to those creatures. Entire civilizations had fallen. What chance did 3 human survey ships have? The council meeting continued, but Taiho barely heard it. He kept thinking about his friends out there, somewhere in that dark sector of space. He thought about the Voidstalkers, the creatures that had killed so many. He wondered if death had been quick, or if the crews had time to be afraid. As the meeting ended and representatives filed out, Taiho stood alone at the viewing window. He looked out at the stars, trying to figure out which direction the Forbidden Sector was. Somewhere out there, 3 ships full of humans had gone looking for knowledge. They found something else instead. He pressed his hand against the cold glass and made a silent promise. If anyone survived, if there was even the smallest chance, he would find a way to bring them home. The galaxy might have given up on them, but humans did not abandon their own. Behind him, the council chamber emptied. The lights dimmed. But far away in the Forbidden Sector, something was happening that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about Voidstalkers, about humans, and about the impossible. On a desolate moon covered in strange crystals, Engineer Daeho was about to do something very simple and very foolish. He was about to show kindness to a creature that everyone said could not be shown kindness, and he was going to use nothing but a cardboard box to do it.